My productivity and focus was nothing I had experienced before. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel, Skylife. This video is all about my experience trying neurofeedback for 1 month. You might be wondering, what the heck is neurofeedback? And that's exactly what I first thought when I first came across it. I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, one of my all-time favorite podcasts. Joe Rogan fans, smash that like button. So anyways, I was listening to Joe Rogan interview this guy named Dr. Andrew Hill, who is a neuroscientist with a PhD in cognitive neuroscience from UCLA. And after looking up Dr. Hill, I discovered that he runs a facility called Peak Brain Institute, which is conveniently really close to where I live in LA. On the website, Peak Brain is described as a gym for your brain, helping you overcome cognitive challenges and meet your peak performance goals. Now, I am always looking to enhance my productivity, focus, cognitive enhancement. So when I saw this, I needed to learn more. I went to Peak Brain Institute and I talked to Dr. Andrew Hill to find out what this neurofeedback thing is all about. What is neurofeedback?
Neurofeedback, we go directly after the brain and exercise things involuntarily. So your brain's doing billions of things all at once. We measure those things moment to moment, and when the right thing happens, we go, good job, brain, with audio and visual input. When the wrong things happen, we withhold that input. And over time, we move the goalposts and gently shape the brain activity further and further in one direction, then figure out if that's the right direction for your performance goals.
So how are you actually doing that? What mechanisms are you using?
Let me give you a concrete example. ADHD is a state where your brain makes too much theta and not enough beta. It's a high theta-beta ratio for most people. So if you come in with ADHD, we look at your theta moment to moment over parts of the brain involved with attention regulation. Whenever the theta goes down, we say, good job, brain, and a spaceship flies faster, a Pac-Man eats dots.
So you're watching this happen?
You're watching audio and visual input, and the input is added whenever the brain moves in the right direction and withheld when the brain moves in the wrong direction. So this ends up being a form of conditioning. It's operant or instrumental conditioning.
Even as Dr. Hill was explaining neurofeedback to me, I still did not totally understand what exactly it was during this interview. After having done it for a month, I now understand. So I'm going to break it down for you just so you have a good understanding of what it is before we really dive into the rest of the video.
Neurofeedback is a type of biofeedback that monitors your brainwaves using something called an electroencephalogram, or EEG, and then shows your brainwaves back to you using a video game-like mechanism. But you're not actually playing the video game, you're just kind of watching it play out. And how it plays out is basically what's happening behind the scenes of your brain. So you're seeing your brain's activity through the game being played back to you on a screen, which is then responding with audio and visual cues, all designed to train your brain to produce certain brainwaves that will hopefully result in a positive impact. There are different types of neurofeedback, and there's even some dispute in the field about what's the right type, but that's generally how it works, and that's how Peak Brain Institute does their neurofeedback training. What types of conditions have you seen neurofeedback to really help?
There's something that are low-hanging fruit for neurofeedback. Those include ADHD, anxiety, sleep issues, migraines, and seizures. ADHD can be eliminated with traditional sort of SMR-based neurofeedback, low beta training neurofeedback. Eliminated maybe 90% of the time in about 3-4 months of training. 30-40 sessions of training, gone for good in most people for classic ADHD. Same's true of anxiety, sleep issues. We can often really ratchet down seizures. Research suggests that the average person receives more than a 50% reduction in seizures, and 5% of people go a full year of no seizures after neurofeedback. We also do a lot of work with brain injuries, with PTSD, OCD, but mostly we work on broad brain health regulatory things. So no matter what you come in for, I'm probably going to want to work on your sleep, stress, mood, and attention for a few weeks, get those things moving, remap your brain, see what's changed, see what hasn't changed, refocus our understanding of your brain based on the goals, and then do some more training to try to get more things shifting.
For me personally, I would love to work on overall focus and optimizing my cognitive functioning.
Great.
I would love to work on energy. I've been having a lot of fatigue recently, and I don't know why. I'm not sure what the issue is. It might have to do with stress.
We would normally re-regulate your sleep, If you have a problem falling asleep easily, would fix that. If you don't sleep deeply enough, would address that.
Okay.
If you have sleep inertia, where the transition from sleep to wakefulness takes a long time, we would adjust that for you.
It's important to note that at no time during neurofeedback is anything going into your head or brain. What you're seeing here is just the application of a gel that will allow the electrodes to attach to my scalp and therefore monitor my brainwaves through the EEG. The first step was to get a baseline reading of my brain and where I'm at and how I can improve. That consisted of two parts. The first was monitoring my brainwaves to get a baseline reading. The second was taking an attention test. The combination of these two readings would allow Dr. Hill to figure out where my brain's at and how he can use neurofeedback to help improve my brain functioning and anything that I'm struggling with.
We see that alpha is about 2 standard deviations higher than average in the back of the head, especially.
So what does that mean?
That usually means your brain gets stuck in neutral, especially in visual processing. So you brown out, you're a little inattentive.
Right.
Places this might operate is when you're tired, you might have a hard time staying focused. So you probably don't qualify as a true ADHD person, not that I'm in a role of diagnosing you, but you know, there's some slight difficulty in inattention, and not quite as much, but it's still there for impulsivity, for automatic responding before you really want to. Beyond that, your brain looks great, and it gives us some good targets to go after. So for your brain, we're gonna do a fair amount of left side training, which will make you feel super crisp and alert when you're awake, and super asleep when you're asleep. You'll take the 2 states of awake and asleep and make them more dissimilar.
I was gonna say, you're a wizard, but I'm gonna say that after.
After
I get the results.
Exactly.
Even after meeting with Dr. Hill, I still felt like I needed to dig into the research on neurofeedback on my own before I handed over my brain. So that's what I did.
I found a few studies that show that neurofeedback is quite effective at treating ADHD. One randomized study that I found particularly compelling administered 30-minute EEG neurofeedback sessions to veterans with PTSD. And the results were very clear for the effectiveness of neurofeedback. I even found that neurofeedback is used to train professional and Olympic athletes. With all this promise though, I did come across some concerns. What I found is there seems to be some disagreement in the field of neurofeedback about how to administer the training properly. One article uncovered many negative side effects that can potentially happen when neurofeedback is not being practiced in the right way. These included everything from fatigue and headaches to even more severe adverse effects such as depression, manic episodes, mood swings, seizures, and deterioration in cognitive functioning. So all of these issues that neurofeedback is supposed to help with, it can also cause. This left me really confused. The article concluded that there needs to be stricter standards of practice in the field of neurofeedback, that it should be administered by a trained professional who really knows what they're doing and knows the brain, and that the process needs to be highly individualized to the brain of the patient undergoing the treatment. This is something that Dr. Hill also stressed the importance of. And that's why I was somewhat okay with handing over my brain to Dr. Hill, who seems to know what he's doing and seems to be one of the best in the field. So I decided to move forward and try it out, even though it was still a little bit scary handing over my brain.
I am a natural skeptic, and with anything that I do or try, I want to approach it with complete objectivity. The worst that can happen is I become incredibly stupid after this. And would that be the worst thing? They say ignorance is bliss. That's a pretty terrible outcome. But if neurofeedback can take me to the next level to help my brain process things faster, to be more productive, then I am all in. Not gonna lie, I watched some crazy Black Mirror last night, and so I'm a little bit freaked out about doing anything like this. Essentially, I'm just looking at this game, and my brain is connected to it, so it's like I'm driving the car with my brain, but I don't know how it works. Am I controlling it with my brain?
You are not. It has no. How you think has no effect on it. How your brain's fluctuating moment to moment does. So it's training your brain, not your mind. It's training resources of your physiology, not your mental states.
I'm trying to get this butterfly to fly through these little hoops. The beeping is the auditory reward telling my brain it's on the right track, and then the visual is me going through, which I just see that was bad. Just to give you an idea,
this is what a typical session is like. Very exciting.
It's been a little up and down, and I don't know really if it's because of the neurofeedback or because I've just been going through a lot of life stuff, a big move, and have been really tired because of that. But we're trying a couple different things to kind of stabilize the effects and the protocols.
The first week and a half were very shaky, and I was having a lot of trouble waking up in the morning. I was getting really tired in the afternoon. This is something they told me, that oftentimes your brain's getting used to the training and it can be a little rocky.
I've been feeling a little bit weird. The benefits haven't really been coming through. And frankly, I feel a little bit nervous about what's going on in my brain. However, I have heard a lot of stories online of people who have had really incredible results treating everything from depression and anxiety to PTSD and autism and ADHD. And I found this girl named Skylana, which I love. I've never heard that name before, and maybe I'll start calling myself Skylana. It's so cute. Skylana used neurofeedback to help her with anxiety, and it sounds like she has a pretty crazy story to share, so I'm gonna go talk to her and find out more. Skylana did neurofeedback at another facility called the EEG Institute. This is her story.
Before neurofeedback, I had a lot of anxiety, the kind of anxiety that is physical, that takes over your body. I had panic attacks once a day or every other day. I really never slept. I was awake all night long. I would be shaking. I would feel like I was gonna die. It was overwhelming. I felt like my mind was nonstop all the time. So it was exhausting. I tried to take an anti-anxiety Xanax because the panic attacks were getting so bad, and I had been in therapy for 2.5 years. And the therapy was great, but there was just something that I couldn't change. No matter how hard I worked, my brain just had this place where it felt broken, and it felt like no matter what I did, I would have a panic attack. I tried to use Xanax, and that made it worse, basically. Nobody had really explained to me what Xanax was actually like, and how some people have to be careful, and how it can actually do the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. And I was the kind of person where it did the opposite. When they say that those drugs can cause suicidal thoughts and whatever, they can change your brain. They can make you do things that you wouldn't normally do. I ended up in the hospital 2 times because I did almost kill myself, and I didn't even really know it. I don't even know how to explain that, but I guess if anybody's ever been on, psychoactive drugs, sometimes you do things and you don't know that you're doing it, or you don't remember. So I was at the point of okay, I'm either gonna die or I'm gonna do something. I had remembered that my grandpa had told me about neurofeedback, and that is what had helped my aunt to get off of drugs and deal with a lot of anger issues. And he gave me the information for the EEG Institute. Since the very first time that I did it, which was June 19th or around there in 2014, I haven't had a panic attack. And up until that point, like I said, I was having them almost every day or every other day, and I have not had one in 4 years since then. I slept that night for the first time in a long time without using something to sleep. It saved my life, and I've never gone back to the way that I was before. Obviously, nothing I had done before had worked that well at all, or had made it worse. So when it did start to actually work, yeah, I was super surprised and shocked, because you really can live without the anxiety, and it seems totally unbelievable that that's even possible. I remember feeling will I ever feel the way that other people feel? But now I do, and it's unbelievable that I lived like that for so long.
Wow. I am blown away by Skylana's story after hearing her experience with neurofeedback, and then those of her friends and family who have also done it. Even if right now I'm not having the best results, she said, just give it a little bit of time, and often it will stabilize, and you have to keep communicating with the practitioner, telling them what's going on so they can adjust. So I've got to keep talking to Peak Brain and Dr. Hill to make sure that,
we are adjusting properly with the protocols, there's something to this for sure.
I told Dr. Hill some of the issues I was having, and we decided to reassess and adjust some of the protocols.
So right now we're training at CZ, the vertex of your head across the left side to your left ear in a region called the sensory motor strip. It incorporates some of the motor cortex as well as the premotor cortex.
What does that mean?
So by training this region, we've found using neurofeedback techniques, it is really good for self-regulation, helps promote sleep, general calmness and focus, inhibitory control.
One thing I've noticed is I think my focus has improved. And I don't know if that's just placebo, but I really do think that I've been pretty on it with work. By the 4th week, I was feeling unstoppable. Now I'm about to myth bust a common misconception and urban legend that multitasking is productive, when in reality multitasking actually destroys productivity because you're doing so many things at once, basically all half-assed with like a fraction of your mental energy. If you focus on one thing at a time and monotask, then you will do that task far better and get it done sooner, and it actually is a vehicle for increased productivity. I try as much as I can to monotask. However, my brain likes to be pulled in a lot of different directions. I often find it really difficult to monotask. This is something I've been trying to work on. How do I increase my productivity? How do I focus on one single task at a time? And it seems like now I'm able to do that when I wasn't before, and that is definitely a noticeable change in this past week or so. I was a beast at work. My productivity and focus was nothing I had experienced before. My sleep also started to regulate very nicely. I woke up so easily this morning, right at 6 a.m., and that never happens. I'm normally struggling to get out of bed. I have to force myself to wake up, and this past week I've noticed that I'm able to get up right at 6 when my alarm goes off, sometimes even without my alarm. I really did not expect that to happen. I was very concerned in the beginning about all of the issues coming up. Neurofeedback can be used to treat ADHD and autism in even very young children. At one of my sessions at Peak Brain, I had a very young child sitting right next to me doing his training. Jessica had told me about a story of a 12-year-old girl who had hundreds of drop seizures every hour, and after her first 6 sessions of neurofeedback, she was having a couple a day. So she greatly reduced the amount of seizures she was having, in addition to never being able to sleep through the night and her parents being up all night because she couldn't sleep, to after doing neurofeedback being able to sleep 12 hours through the night. So we have these stories of people who have had a ton of benefits in all sorts of ways, including veterans with PTSD. Just because one person does have great results does not mean that every single person will. However, I think there's so much potential here, and we just have to look more into it, and we've got to make sure that this is a field that is researched, because it has the potential to help so many people who maybe are at the end of their rope and nothing has worked for them before. Dr. Hill says that he normally does 30 to 40 sessions for the effects to be lasting. I did 16 over the course of 1 month.
In addition to my anecdotal evidence for my results, we also did another brain mapping to see how I improved in terms of the data.
What were my results?
Yeah, so if you remember when we first mapped your brain, we found a couple things in terms of like executive function or attention management. This database says you're a little ADD-like when I first met you, and you're no longer fitting that criteria, which means you're being a lot more visually attentive, I would expect. And your brain map shows the same thing. We had about a 2 to 2.5 standard deviation excess in the back of the head, meaning you weren't able to shut down your alpha. And now that's down to about 1.5 standard deviations. So again, about a standard deviation of change. And I'm not at all surprised you're feeling a little more productive, crisp. I would also guess that transitioning in and out of sleep might be a touch easier for you.
Yes, I was very pleasantly surprised to find that waking up in the morning was a lot easier. Well, it was a world of a difference. So I don't know how you did that, but
Well, sleep sleep affects everything, of course.
this is still kind of a newer alternative method of treatment that needs to be studied more rigorously. It needs to get more funding, although it's quite difficult, as we know, and it's very difficult to administer a double-blind placebo-controlled study for something like neurofeedback, because you really do need the individualization of the process for it to really work, which means that you're going to need the participation of the subjects. It was a little scary at times, I'm not gonna lie, feeling like my brain was being tossed and turned and slapped around, but I think it was a positive experience in the end for me to learn about this, and I got incredible results once it did stabilize. Okay, that's it for this episode of Sky Life. I hope that you enjoyed learning all about neurofeedback and seeing me mess around with my brain. If you have any ideas for topics that you want me to explore or things you want me to try, definitely comment those below, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you will be notified when I post a new video. And remember, you have the power to thrive. You have the power to live your best life ever. It's yours, it's here, and it's this moment. All right, I will see you next week. Bye.